So, but it was just like one foot in front of another, and we just learned from our mistakes and tried to make it, just grinding it.
Yeah, it's weird. Cameron and I were talking about this last night. I was talking about it with Matt today.
Oh my God. Go in.
Oh!
Just made it!
Oh!
Woo! It's in. I hadn't seen one in a long time.
Oh, that's amazing.
That was a damn good shot. That lead, and then it just took a left turn. It was like you'd put it like that. It was perfect.
Slow as plastic.
Just
Spent money to begin with.
right in the middle.
Thanks for your help.
Congratulations.
Appreciate you.
That was awesome. Rob Collins, one half of King Collins golf course design, and part of the team that designed and built Sweetens Cove, and one of the owners of Sweetens Cove.
This is probably the answer to this question. It could be like a 30 to 40 minute podcast, and I think I've listened to all of them. But like, how did you end up here, Sweetens Cove?
So I got contacted in 2010 by the Thomas family, who owns Sequatchie Concrete, and that referral came from a guy named King Emig, who was a local golfing legend. And King, in his opinion about things, carried a lot of weight, and he recommended me for this project. They had this idea of maybe just tweaking a few things and this and that, and I told Bob, I'm like, look, I mean, if you really want this place to be successful, you need to do a full renovation. If that's not what you want to do, that's your golf course. I mean, I respect that decision, but we're not interested if we can't really attempt to do something that'll move the needle. If you look back at that time, I think there were 3 or 4 golf courses that opened domestically. I was in my mid-30s at that point, and I knew that, and Tad knew that if we were ever going to make it as a business, this thing had to make it, and it had to be special.
What did you see? What did you find when you came down here and you drove through it the first time?
It was shockingly dilapidated.
Yeah.
So we started construction on June 2nd, 2012, and brought in a guy named Gus Grantham, who's an amazingly talented shaper that Tad had met on a project in Egypt. And this hole, I got a little bit of inspiration from the 4th hole at Pebble Beach, which is one of my favorite holes there, where you kind of have to hug the ocean to really get a nice angle into that super skinny green. I've hit it left there, and like, you just have this weird angle and you're uncomfortable. And so I was like, why don't we do something kind of like Pebble Beach, where you want to kind of find this little tight little window in here. This little knob right here, Dan Proctor helped put this in. I remember that was a neat little feature that he put in. And this can help kick you left, kick you right, or if you hit just the right spot, it'll kick you forward. And there's a little slot on this green that I'll try to hit right in through here, where it's a safe route, but once it gets on, it'll kind of turn to the right. The more you get off the axis of play, the more you go this way to the left, it just increases exponentially in difficulty. And that's one thing I really like about Sweetens, is like, you're pretty much always playing golf. It's hard to lose a ball here unless you hit it in the water on 6. You're always gonna have a shot, but you really, really might hate your angle. I mean, it's a beautiful setting. The golf course itself was a mess.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a little maintenance facility right down there that had holes in the roof and all kinds of things. And there was this guy named Tommy who worked down there, and I introduced myself, and there was these yellow jackets flying around everywhere. And I'm looking at this piece of shit golf course thinking, if this is where I have to start, I mean, is this really what I want to do? You know, we put our heart and soul into it and wrapped it up in summer of 2012. Took about a year. The Thomases ended up deciding to kind of get back to their original business, which was concrete manufacturing. And so they approached me about trying to take it over on a long-term lease. And when I took the golf course over in October 17, 2014, we ran out of money the day we opened. And I had to fire our great superintendent, a guy named Michael Burrows, who I'd developed a very close relationship with. That was a terrible day. Tad and I maintained the golf course by ourselves, and then Tad ended up going back to Jordan to work on a project, and then I stayed on and I maintained the golf course by myself through the winter. And we kept talking to these potential investors, and every one of them fell through, one after another. And then my brother stepped up. He and his wife put in some money, and that made it really personal because my brother is my hero, you know, and the notion that I was gonna let him down. I was already going to go to the ends of the earth to see this place make it, but to the notion that my brother would believe in me and that I was going to fail, if this thing goes down, I'm not going to have anything left on the table. This is kind of a fun area right here. You know, we decided to leave the tree, and you know, this kind of brings up the earlier point of like there being multiple ways to get around and get to things. You know, the weaker player or the adventurous player can go to the flag that John's by, the blue one. You could bang a 5 or 6 iron in there, run it up, take that contour and let it drift down, or you can go over, or you could punch it just under, directly at it. There's just a lot of different ways to do it here. If you pull it off, I mean, you're gonna be putting for birdie. If you don't, you're gonna have one of the hardest recovery shots on the course. I'll try going left of the tree and catching that contour by the shadow. With any luck, it'll go up there. Need a little bit more on it.
Pretty fun though.
It's coming down.
Fun
but
to
it's
watch.
But you get the sense of it, of how it can, you know, do that or hit it over and hope you don't get rejected, the old Patrick Ewing.
I don't know what I call it. It was the start of something sort of new era. I'm not saying it's responsible for everything, but Sweetens is for sure like this sort of landmark of the way golf courses are covered, talked about golf, something, I don't know what the era is called.
Something happened, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this was kind of the first social media golf course. I mean, we didn't have many people coming out. We kind of created this little online community that was, we didn't create it, I mean, it coalesced around the place, you know. And then the New York Times article came out in 17. God, we were hemorrhaging money through that whole year. I remember when I came up into the shed and there was these 2 guys there. They had Bought This Raw member logo polos on. I'm like, what are you doing here? They're like, oh, we read the article. I'm like, do you want to go to the honors, or I have a friend who's a member there. Do you want to play Black Creek? And they're like, no, we just wanted to see this. And I'm like, okay. And to tell you how stupid we were and clueless, the first advertisement we ever did was a $500 physical ad in the Lookout Mountain Mirror. Who puts an ad in a newspaper? I mean, that's ironic given it's a social media golf course.
Right.
And so we were like, well, that didn't work. Let's try Instagram. Let's try Twitter. And so, but it was just like one foot in front of another, and we just learned from our mistakes and tried to make it, you know, just grinding it. One thing I think that's kind of neat is we had all this dead area out here. It was basically just, you know, this gigantic 70-acre field of Bermuda grass. And we needed to get rid of the dead space and create some connectivity and some strategic interest between the holes. And being a concrete manufacturer, Sequatchie Concrete produces all this sand. And so, you know, this golf course was constructed with all of their raw materials, which I think is really neat. And so because we had access to that, it was free sand, and it was going to be a way to display their product in an interesting and new way. You know, we added these waste bunkers and given a lot of character to this kind of back side of the property, or kind of, you know, middle of it, which is basically the heart of the golf course, I think.
It feels like your personal career history and the course's history are sort of obviously intertwined, like ups and downs.
100%. I mean, it was, you know, I'm not trying to say that, and I definitely wouldn't put forth that, you know, this design meant more to me than this guy doing this course or that. I mean, there's a lot of passionate people in our industry who do a lot of great work, but there was the aspect of, with that because we were new to the scene, if we didn't do a good job with number one, there never was going to be a number two. And then when you layer in the fact that I took the golf course over and operated and managed it with Patrick Boyd and a few other people, that grind, I mean, just developed this just insatiable desire for me to see this place be successful. There's an energy here to this golf course that is a result of many, many people pouring everything they had into it. And this place kind of reflects that back to you. And it's not something you can fake. I mean, you can't acquire that energy or that feel by stroking a $100 million check.
Did you feel like you had, you know, in the 18-hole course, you feel like there are some holes where it's like a breather or something that's conventional or something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like you didn't have, or you wanted to kind of maximize opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, you have definitely an ebb and a flow to this place, but it's not as up and down as you would have in a 18-hole routing, to your point, where you have a hole that's more chill, more laid back. I mean, each one of these holes are very intentionally kind of like a neon sign in the desert. I mean, there's kind of a jump up and down, kind of look at me kind of aspect to them. And that was very intentional, because part of what you have to figure out is like, what's the right answer here? And, you know, figuring that out for Sweetens was, you know, they had to be these kind of audacious holes. It had to stand out. Otherwise, you know, it wasn't ever going to make it.
Right.
You know, there's brash features out here, you know, for a reason. I mean,
right.
I mean, for the playing interest that we've discussed, but also for the fact that it's, you know, it's a 9-hole golf course in the middle of nowhere. And just around this green, I mean, there's so many different options for how to get there. I mean, if I'm playing to this hole, I tend to be aggressive and try to drive it, hit a 3-wood up into this plateau. But that, you know, it gets you into trouble if you push it right. But if you pull it left, depending on where you are, it can be not too bad. Like if you're down over here, you know, this isn't that hard of a shot. You're just kind of just smacking it up the hill, I think. But then, like, you know, getting in the bunker, of course, is really hard. And then if you're going to that pin and you're here, now you've got a problem. I mean, there's this contour here that we really worked on that feeds down into the bunker that, you know, you can utilize that to help hook you around and give you that 10 or 15 foot shot. Or if you want to play it in the air, you can go directly at it. But, you know, most of the time it's very tight turf, might have a little bit of a downhill lie, really tough shot. You got that little bit of a backboard back there. You could try to hit a spinner off of that. So there's, you know, 3 ways to it right there. But, you know, when you get the club back to right here and you start thinking about that bunker, it's hard to commit.
Talked about like cutting out ads, making ads. What was like another like menial task, like the most rudimentary task? You talked about the Yellow Jacket barn where you were like, you have literally done everything here. What are some of the things, like the jobs, quote unquote, work that you've done here over the course of it?
Oh man, there's a funny story. This is probably the most menial task. We were out here and the mobile drug lab from the concrete company shows up. And there's 20 guys out here busting their ass every day, all of whom would fail a drug test. I thought, if they have to take this test, we are screwed. Like, we're not gonna get these bunkers grass, we're not gonna get the golf course open. Tad and I are never gonna be able to show the world what we did. I got out here and the guys are in full panic mode. They're like, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, I don't know. And there's a Mountain Dew bottle on the ground, and I grabbed it and went over by my car and filled it up. And every single guy on the crew right down there by that little concrete structure put my urine in a vial, and they all passed. And we got to keep grass in the bunkers. And you know, that, we never would have gotten it open without that.
We talked about King. Why is this the only hole with the name?
So this is the King hole, named after King Emig. King died when I was in Japan. I think it was May of 2015. You know, he had had such a big impact on this place. And we had talked about naming each hole, and Patrick and I were like, let's just name only one hole and name it King. King and I came out to this spot and looked around and, you know, rode all over the golf course. And at one point in time, he had said to me, Rob, it'd be so cool if you could find a Himalayas par 3. And I loved that idea. And so early on, before Bob ever hired me, I would come out here and just walk around and try to get ideas. And I came to right here and I called King on the phone. I said, you remember that place over there where that par 3 was? And there was just kind of this big open field with this tiny little rise. And I'm like, we can do a Himalayas there. And he's like, do it. And I'm like, we're going to. And so we took a lot of the dirt out of the lake that's on number 6 and flopped it up here and built this kind of, you know, ode to the Himalayas, you know, 20,000 square foot green, which fit the space, this big, big open space, kind of filled it up. You know, this is one where Gus was like, let me have this one, Rob, let me go wild here. And so we were 5 or 6 greens into it.
Yeah.
He was picking up on the themes. And the way it sits, I mean, it's cool because you've got left-hand pins that are completely blind, right-hand pins that are visible, some are semi-blind, and this hole, maybe more than any other, sums up Sweetens in how much the golf course can change from one round to the next or one day to the next, depending on tee and pin location. And just really this place being a meditation on those ideas of how do you create a grounds where all these different scenarios can unfold. From here to there, if you hit the right speed, there's this little ramp on that false front where you can ram it in there and it'll spit out right in that direction. But you got to do it just right. Ride it. There you go.
Oh my gosh. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
That's really good. How long's the green front to back?
What is it, John? 94 yards, something like that? Yeah.
That's how you have to have that variety.
Yeah.
7 iron, but more than a 7, depending on who you are.
Exactly.
Wedge.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to even try that after you did.
Of course, clearly for tape, we were going to this pin, but we're having a little bit of fun.
Right. Nope.
Go.
Nope.
Go.
Not
Go.
high or hard enough. Bye. The character or specialness of this place is built on like having to go through the hard times, if that makes sense. Whereas like, I'd say building a golf course now is a little different probably than when you did it.
Sure.
And so maybe that adds to like the character of the place instead of just like, you know, very wealthy guy writing a check now to build a golf course.
I think so. And I think, you know, I think a lot of times in life we are pawns to larger movements that we don't necessarily understand. I mean, if there hadn't have been Twitter and Instagram, how could we have made it? We never could have made it. If there hadn't have been no laying up, hadn't been the Friday, hadn't been the Golfer's Journal, the end result and everything that's happened, hell yes, it was worth it. But all the things that happened, I mean, would I have really done it if I had known? I mean, there was such a level of naivete with me in operating this golf course. It's comical looking back on it. And it made it somehow. It was one miracle after another.
Obviously the course is pretty singularly unique in and of itself. What would you say, you know, is the culture of Sweetens Cove?
You know, there's no barrier to being a part of this group and this community. We just want people to come here and feel like it's a home for them, and that they take a little bit of this place away with them. And you know, all you got to do is show up, and then you're a part of it. I mean, there's only 2 rules here. Is number 1, respect the golf course and respect everyone else around you. Other than that, I don't really care. I mean, it's as long as you're nice to people and treat other people well and treat the golf course with respect, you can do whatever else you want. I don't care.